I'll have people make awful comments in front of me, and every now and then I will call them on it in the spot. And on occasion that had happened, or, we're calling someone out and knowing that they're going to feel embarrassed, but, having someone say something like, I'm struggling with infertility. Meanwhile, heroin addicts are having babies. And that happened. And I turned around and I was like, well, yeah, I'm one of them. I'm a heroin addict baby. I was born addicted, actually. And the person's jaw just dropped. But then it's what happens next. It's because this happened so many times in my adulthood, they want to fill in the gaps, and they'll do it without asking questions. They will fill in the gaps for you, and they'll say, oh, well, and look at you now. Aren't you so glad you don't talk to them anymore? And I was like, what? Or, oh, wow. So how old were you when they got clean? Firstly, gross, weird language to use. And never? What do you mean? And so I started thinking about that and realizing there were only two arcs that were acceptable. One was that I had separated permanently from my family, thus freeing myself from their shackles and going on to bloom without them, or they themselves had become fully healed people, thus enabling me to bloom. And it was this idea of these very Eurocentric metrics for success, right? I've learned to speak, in quotation marks, very white, very, academically articulate. And I've learned to dress and present myself a certain way in order to not create more barriers and hurdles for the message I'm trying to get out there when I'm doing my academic work or when I'm trying to do advocacy, as my elders have instructed me to do. And if you're, in quotation marks, successful, but you are part of that family, no, that they will deny it. And what really started to itch at me was when I was a kid, I was treated as nothing by so many people because they saw my family as nothing. And I talk about it in the book, I had a teacher in year 7, and I was one of the youngest in my year. I was only 12 in year 7, who in front of everyone told me that I was nothing and that I never would be anything because my family was nothing. And she said even worse things than that, but I didn't put it in the books. I thought people are going to struggle to believe it. But she called me a bitch in front of the whole class. I was 12. And I was a little goody two-shoes nerd. All I wanted was affirmation and praise from my teachers, and I loved to learn, and I was really good at testing well. So I had everything working for me that should have made me palatable to teachers. But the teachers who knew who my family were fucking hated me. On site, the second they saw my name on that roll, it was just over Red Rover. And that was amazing. So I was nothing because my family was nothing. But now that I'm successful, my family can't have had anything to do with that. And it was the maths isn't mathing. That's not how things work. If you can acknowledge that I've developed strong analytical skills and I've learned to be articulate and to navigate certain systems, where do you think I learned that from? I'm the first in my family to get a PhD, but I'm not the first in my family to have been capable. My parents, I'm going to check off again, but my mum was so clever. And her favorite shows were shows like Letters and Numbers and she was smarter than, every contestant. She was fantastic. She loved The Chase. She loved all of those shows that were quiz shows and, crosswords. And she was just brilliant. She was so clever. But she had an even harder start to life than me. She had even less access than I did. She didn't get given the opportunity. It wasn't a choice for her to finish high school. So, this idea that if my parents weren't fully healed, then I couldn't be successful, or if I was in contact with them still, I couldn't be fully successful, was just so false. But I thought, it makes sense that people think that, because where do we see that role modeled? If you look across pop culture, if you look across storying, if you look across anything like that, it's always a full separation or this, fairy tale healing. And people and life is so much more complex than that. Trauma is more complex than that.